Hi everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video, it's a fun video. We're going to ask and answer one very simple question, which is, well, what specs are doing the best in the pre-patch for Shadowlands right now? Again, I say this is a fun video because, serious progression time is over. That was patch 8.3, we've gone and done that. This is the pre-patch. Things are quite broken, balance is all over the place. But it's still kind of interesting, isn't it, to know which specs are doing well and which aren't. It's not really all that reflective of Shadowlands, because what you have going on right now is we've got essentially Shadowlands class design, but instead of having the Covenant abilities and legendaries, etc., they're supposed to go alongside of that. We've got the old BFA systems of essences and Azerite traits, and Azerite traits in particular were designed for the BFA classes, so they do some really wacky and weird things when you put them into the Shadowlands specs, which we're going to see reflected in this chart as we go through it. But yeah, so just expect that. It is still fun. Again, it's just fun to know this, and we can revisit this chart, in a week or two as well, and see how the specs are doing then, after a couple of little hot fixes and bug fixes, and once people start figuring out the new specs and classes, because there's been lots of lag, there's been lots of add-on issues, all that sort of stuff, but still. Also worth noting that I've just sorted this by the 75th percentile for these charts. So this means that we're looking at the top 25% of players. I just chose this because it still gives you a relatively decent sample size. And, it's the best 25% of the mythic players in terms of performance. So generally speaking, they know how to play these classes. They're playing these specs well. So it's not like we're taking just random people and you could have very divergent things. These are players that are going to be performing well. So it gives you, I think, a good insight into how the specs are performing right now. I'm going to look at DPS first. I'm going to split this up into 3 different tiers. So right here, we've got obviously tier 3. This is the bottom of the barrel. These guys are really struggling right now in pre-patch. Feral Druid is dead last by a little bit of a chunk right there. Windwalker Monk then. The reworked Enhancement Shaman is down here. Demonology Warlocks. Frost Death Knights, Havoc Demon Hunter, and Fury Warrior. So I think certainly one of the big ones that jumps out immediately is the Demon Hunter's Havoc has just dropped off just massively. They're really struggling right now. Our Demon Hunters in the raid are not happy. Because, Demon Hunter was the most played melee spec, I believe, for Mythic N'Zoth by quite a large margin. In fact, I almost feel like it was... certainly Fire Mages was up there, but Havoc Demon Hunter certainly was not far behind in terms of being one of the most played specs in 8.3, just across the board. So yeah, they're really struggling right now. I think all of these specs, you can expect them to underperform fairly hard. Frost Death Knight as well. That one's certainly a bit of a disappointing one because they were nerfed coming into pre-patch, and you're kind of going, why were they nerfed when they're not doing very well at all? It's a little bit weird, but anyway, that's the nature of balancing, and good thing that Shadowlands is delayed so they can sort out this balancing for when Shadowlands goes live. But yeah, I'm kind of definitely sad for me to see Enhancement and Windwalker struggling. Windwalker certainly doesn't scale all that well with the stats that we have in 8.3, are coming from 8.3. Feral Druid obviously has got a bad damage pattern for Nyalotha. Stuff, dies too fast. The dots are hard to get use of and stuff like that. And a very, very long 3-minute cooldown. Definitely not helping. 3-minute CDs. Yeah, not great. Anyway, let's go up here into the second tier. Right, the second tier. And I think we'll cut it off there. Yeah, so the second tier then. You can see we've got quite a big jump up. And then we're going up this way. So yeah, in this one we've got Ret Paladin is obviously ahead of the other ones. That's quite nice for the Ret Paladin. They're doing not too bad. These are middle of the pack specs. You see we've got all 3 of the rogue specs pretty much neck and neck. Outlaw's a slight bit ahead. A very slight bit ahead. Sub-Rogue's doing very well. Assassination is a small bit behind, but they're all pretty comparable. You can see actually the Arms Warrior is right there in the middle of the Rogues, and then if we look just above the Rogues, we've got Destruction Warlock and Fire Mage. So this is certainly going to be a very stark contrast to the rating you were doing in patch 8.3 and the specs that were good. Because if you talked about the top 5 specs for patch 8.3 for doing Mythic N'Zoth, Fire Mage number 1, then you had Beast Mastery Hunter, Destruction Warlock, probably Destruction above BM, but those 3 specs and Arms Warrior as well, they were really pumping. Those specs were really, really pumping. And then we look here at this list and we see Fire Mage is just bang in the middle now, Destrolock bang in the middle, and Arms Warrior pretty much bang in the middle as well. So essentially the loss of Masterful Corruption for the Fire Mages, and some of the negative class changes for Fire Mage and Destruction Warlock definitely hurting them. The loss of Expedient for Arms and for Destruction, those corruptions definitely hurting them a lot. as well. They're still doing fine. I mean, there's loads of cleave and Nyalotha, so both, all of these specs are very good at like 2-target cleave with Destro and Arms, which is good in lots of fights, and Fire Mage still cleaving well. So they're still doing okay, but they're very much middle of the pack. In fact, Survival Hunter now outpacing all of these specs. Which is quite funny. So Survival Hunter is currently doing very well. Of course, Survival Hunter has basically 0 spec-specific changes. They just have a few extra Hunter perks, but that's it. Looking then at, well, what are the best specs? Which ones are doing by far the best? I probably could have actually stuck MM and Balance Druid into that. In fact, let me add those into that section. That makes the most sense. Yeah, let's add them in there to Section 2, Tier 2, Balance Druid. Doing fine with their big rework. They're doing quite well at the moment, quite solid. And Marksmanship Hunter with, some nice updates to Marksmanship Hunter. They've really jumped up from a spec that saw almost 0 representation, almost 0 in patch 8.3. It was really just BM hunters and no other hunters at all. You can see these 2 other hunter specs are actually, they're pulling their own weight. They're doing well enough. Moving into tier 1 then, so the proper tier 1. I do want to cut this off a little bit early because I've got a secret tier S. You got a sneak peek there. We'll come back to that in a second. But going into tier 1, we can see again this other sort of jump up here. And this is where some of these specs really start to pull ahead in a big way. So we have the Elemental Shaman. They're doing really, really well right now. Again, despite struggling with reworks and stuff on the beta. When it comes to the pre-patch, they're putting out the numbers. They're doing well. I have heard rumors. I haven't actually checked this, but I've heard that they're just spamming Lightning Bolt or something. I'm not sure if that's true, but they're certainly pumping out the DPS. Frost Mages, again, are doing super well. Now, on the beta, obviously, Frost Mage is kind of insane, particularly in dungeons. So not quite that insane here in the pre-patch. I think because Icicles and Icelands doesn't scale with their mastery. But certainly, like, if you've played on the beta, you've seen Frost Mages in dungeons just destroying things. They're good here in the pre-patch, but they're not that insane. Unholy Death Knight is also doing incredibly well. I believe they also had a bug with an Azurite trait, or excuse me, with, I think it was the Azurite trait. It was something to do with their Magus of the Dead, with their, Army of the Dead, that was double dipping in mastery. Now that has been fixed, but Unholy Death Knight is still doing very, very well, probably with some Azurite traits, double stacking and doing some weird stuff, I'm not sure. Arcane Mage, currently the top performing mage spec by quite a substantial margin actually, so Arcane Mage is pumping. Again, I believe this is due to an Azurite trait. I think what they're doing is they're stacking an Arcane Missiles Azurite trait, and then you basically just cast Arcane Missiles all the time, and that does insane amounts of damage. So yeah, really exploiting an Azurite trait to be very, very strong there. And Affliction Warlocks, a big jump up again. Their rework is obviously suiting them very, very well, and they're holding their own across Nyalotha. Again, lots of cleave in Nyalotha, and Affliction with their new Malefic Rapture, Soul Shard Spender are really doing work. But there are a couple of specs which are even better than that. They are in the S tier, and those are, oh my goodness, look at this. Look, I just can't, Beast Mastery Hunter and a Shadow Priest. So yeah, if you guys have done any raiding, of course, you will have spotted this and just how dominant these specs are. I'm not exactly sure why BM Hunter is doing so well, but they are clearly doing very, very well. They're not massively changed from patch 8.3, but they're doing very solid. And Shadow Priest with their rework, obviously I play Shadow Priest. I was going to have some footage in the background here from our Mythic raid where I was playing Shadow, but I forgot to record it because I'm an idiot. I'll try get some on Sunday when we're going to be doing the Zoth, etc. But yeah, Shadow Priest is absolutely pumping the damage right now. Some of their stuff just scales incredibly well with stats right now. And they also have an Azurite trait, Spiteful Apparitions, which is improving the damage of their ghosts that they create. So they're just stacking that Azurite trait, and it's really, really overpowered, as you can see right now. So in terms of that, they are just crushing the damage meters here in the pre-patch. So yeah, this is what your raid balance is looking like for the DPS. Now, when we jump across to some of the other specializations, we can see some other stuff. So let's jump across. This is the tank DPS, right? Again, for the 75th percentile. And you can see overall, this is what the tanks are looking like. So I would say that for the most part, the tanks are relatively balanced. They're relatively close between each other, except for Protection Paladin, who in terms of their DPS, in terms of the damage they're doing, just jump way out into the front. The Protection Paladin is just churning out lots and lots and lots of damage. They are absolutely crushing those damage meters. Vengeance is certainly, the Demon Hunter is lagging a bit behind. I think they're quite good in AoE damage, but in single target damage, they're really quite far behind the other specs. So yeah, that's what the damage is looking like for the tanks. So fairly balanced really across the board. Just Prot Paladin really stands out as being quite exceptional. Let's look at healer damage as well. I'm going to get rid of the tanks. There we go. So for the healer DPS, and then we'll look at the healer HPS as well. So for the DPS for the healers, I mean, again, you can see this is really, we've got 4 healers quite close together. The old Resto Druid is struggling a bit here in terms of actually doing damage. But the other healers, Holy Priest, Resto Shaman, Mistweaver Monk, they're all fairly close together. And then we've got 2 healers, the Holy Paladin and the Disc Priest, which are way ahead. The Disc Priest even a good chunk ahead of the Holy Paladin. So yeah, this is what Blizzard has decided for healer design. This is what they're happy with. This is what we're going to have in the Shadowlands as well, is that the Holy Paladin and Disc Priest, they simply do way more damage than the other healers. So yeah, there we go. Now we'll see when we jump into the healer HPS. So this is the healing numbers that they're pumping out. Let's see how we're looking over here. So Holy Priest is quite a chunk ahead, actually. Holy Priest is really pumping out that healing. Resto Shaman doing very well too. Disc Priest way up there. Mistweaver and Resto Druid then, and Holy Paladin lagging a bit behind here in last place. So obviously we have the Holy Paladin rework to how they're playing, and that is certainly affecting them. Now I actually think that, in my opinion, I think that Holy Priest is obviously doing a bit too much, and Resto Shaman maybe doing a little bit too much healing as well. But generally speaking, I think this is okay, and I'm actually fine with Holy Paladin being a little bit behind the other healers in terms of healing. Like, if we expect that this is the average, right, and then the Holy Paladin's a bit behind, I think that is okay, because in the DPS, they're way ahead. So I think that actually makes a whole lot of sense. You're going, okay, Holy Paladin, they bring good utility, they've got Aura Mastery for damage reduction, they do loads of damage, they've got really good single target healing. Well, it's okay if their overall HPS is a bit behind. That's actually fine. I think it's certainly going to be tough for the Holy Paladin, having been, you know, just incredibly overpowered in patch 8.3, because they had incredible damage, insane healing, insane cooldowns. They were just the best at everything. So it's certainly a fall from grace for them. But I think this is actually, it makes sense when you compare the DPS charts and the HPS charts. And you can also see we've got a problem, I think, as well in terms of balance with Discipline Priest, because Discipline Priest, not only is it doing, you know, 3 times as much damage as other healers, you know, like the Resto Druid, almost 3 times as much damage as the Shamans, the Holy Priests, the Mistweaver Monks, right? That's a lot of free damage bringing to your team, but they're also way up there in terms of the healing as well. So I think that is a big balance problem. I mean, they are, as you can see, they're a big chunk ahead of where they should be. They should be down here with the Holy Paladin, in my opinion. I got, you know, a lot of Disc Priests when I said this in my my Shadowlands review. A lot of Disc Priests were very angry with me, which to me is just baffling. I don't know how you can look at these charts and go, okay, I've got this, and then I should be like near the top of the healing as well. Like, I don't see how you have to be so just committed to your bias to feel like that is fair. I don't really get it. But anyway, that's what people think. In my opinion, this is a bit of a balance problem. Obviously, it's going to be tough for Holy Paladins, you know, to go from being the gods to going to being pretty balanced, I think, considering you do damage. But there you are, guys. That's how everything is looking in the pre-patch. Yeah, that's how everything is looking in the pre-patch. So yeah, interesting stuff. Obviously, you can see in the DPS in particular, things are quite wacky, quite mad. It's pre-patch though. Again, guys, just let me know how your pre-patch is going. Are you guys having fun? Obviously, there's no particular pre-patch content right now. There's just like the leveling revamp, and it's just sort of leveling up your characters, getting them ready to go into Shadowlands, and, you know, deciding on a main, deciding on which spec you're going for, getting a feel for how they're playing. Let me know though how you're finding it, what your thoughts are. Thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for our beta update video, because we've got a new patch on the beta, so I'll give you all the details on that tomorrow. See you then. Bye bye.